Ukraine attacks one of the most important and beloved generals in the Russian Federation, a major victory for Ukrainian military intelligence. But in reality, this might not be the case at all. Despite what is now very likely being reported by the vast majority of Western media. Like that, a Ukrainian victory and a NATO victory, therefore, actually represents a poisoned gift. Ukraine has not only ended up attacking the heart of the Russian Federation, where that lieutenant general is still fighting for his life, and it may end up playing a very bad trick on Ukraine, with him still returning to his post and responding with full force, where Ukraine will still have to face a response, wouldn't you say? Not as revenge, but as a just response from the Russian Federation. But above all, and more than anything, the one Ukraine has attacked is not so much the Russian Federation. The one it has attacked. Vladimir Zelensky is to Donald Trump, is to the United States, and therefore is to the North Atlantic Alliance, ultimately. And now I'm going to explain to you in detail, thoroughly, exactly why. What is this man you are seeing on your screens? One of the best, most important, and most beloved generals of the Russian Federation, Vladimir Stepanovich Elixir, who recently suffered an assassination attempt by Ukrainian military intelligence. But in reality, besides, of course, provoking a clear escalation of the conflict, where Russia will now have to respond, where this man was the right-hand man of the person who is now in charge. Mr. Koschukov, head of Russian military intelligence, leads negotiations between Russia and Ukraine. But in reality, between Russia and NATO, which of course for now are not going to move forward, the conflict is going to end up escalating. But above all, the most important thing, the key issue here, is that Ukraine has just given a slap in the face, personally, to Donald Trump, Vladimir Zelensky. And it doesn't take off at all because the man of 1,000 roles, 1,000 faces, and only one suit. It turns out that in the middle of negotiations, when Donald Trump had already gotten involved in Venezuela, and well, having to leave there for the moment without any results. Nothing to sell beyond the absolutely illegal kidnapping of Nicolas Maduro, but now staying quiet about the Venezuelan issue. So it doesn't seem like they're achieving too many victories there. Then they got involved in Iran and had to pull back, wait, and increase their strength again in the Middle East, without daring to launch a definitive attack because of the likely response that Iran itself could still carry out. So we're in one of the most delicate moments for the United States. But I would also say for the alliance, this man, Mr. Alexiev, was and still is, because he is still alive, one of the most beloved within the Russian Federation. Yes, but this attack, the ones who have been hurt the most are that alliance, which is actually facing the Russian Federation on Ukrainian territory. Because this rift that had already opened due to Greenland and other issues where the United States, I think everyone is already aware of this. The United States is getting along worse and worse with the European Union that is increasingly aware of the mess it has just gotten itself into, since, indeed, it has created an enormous dependence on the United States. And now it turns out they were never really friends. It's just that European politicians, for some reason, have been believing that story. But most importantly, when the negotiations take place, when Marco Rubio is announcing that there have indeed been very significant advances, that indeed some agreements have been reached between Russia and between Ukraine, the United States, mediating there, and when they really try to bring out, I repeat, that possible victory and already raise the level of negotiations, go further because indeed there are issues they still haven't reached and that still in some way remain open. Like, for example, the fact that Ukraine has to withdraw its army from Donbass. At the very least, Zelensky doesn't want to accept it, so the Kiev regime arrives. And at that moment, precisely, they end up carrying out this coup. This assassination attempt, which, by the way, didn't go very well because the Russian lieutenant general put up resistance. Because they will most likely end up finding the assassin. Because, except for a few headlines, Ukraine hasn't achieved anything good at all. Well, they have achieved something, which is the anger of the United States. Donald Trump, I assure you, is now remembering not only the mother, but the whole family of Volodymyr Zelensky. One of the best moments in reality. Relations between the United States and Russia. Obviously, no one from Russia or the United States actually believes they've suddenly become friends, right? But they have certainly been reaching some sort of understanding. Donald Trump was acknowledging that Vladimir Putin did indeed keep his word by offering that week of energy truce to Ukraine, something that, in fact, Vladimir Zelensky himself denied. There was already an unofficial back and forth, let's say, between the leader of Ukraine and the leader of the United States. But above all, keeping in mind that Ukraine does not carry out operations of this magnitude without proper prior preparations, that Ukraine simply does not act. In this case, without NATO's consent, or from some of the most frequent partners and those most interested in the war. Well, here we most likely have to mention the United Kingdom in particular. So, at the very least, the United Kingdom. And maybe France would be there, and maybe Germany. That would have to be seen compared to the United States. Some want to ease the tension now, some want to completely withdraw from the Ukrainian issue, and others do not. They are leaving Donald Trump with no way out, no chance to sell his voters a clear victory. On the level of international peace, world peace. That is exactly what Donald Trump wants to emphasize, his role as a peacemaker. Is that exactly what the globalists, the Democrats, want to take away from him? First of all, the Democrats, who historically, especially in recent years, have gotten along much better with the European Union than the Republicans within the United States. Now, in fact, in the particular case of Spain, for example, they are attacking Pedro Sanchez, Elon Musk, well, a huge number of high level personalities within the United States. Now, all that's left is for Donald Trump to speak out because of this ban on social media for those under 16 years old. I'm still not really sure how they plan to carry it out, and I'm also not sure they'll actually do it. We'll see. And it's definitely not about the well being of minors, considering other things that minors are allowed to do in Spain. But that's not the point here. We're talking about the fact that by attacking the Russian Federation in these terms, Ukraine has not only provoked a response that will end up being carried out in the form of brutal massive attacks within its territory by the Russian Federation. We're discussing huge, sometimes demonstrative attacks being prepared. Russia won't behave like the European Union. That is, there may not be attacks. Or maybe there will be attacks tonight. But this by no means will mean that it's over or that the matter has been settled. If there are attacks tonight, Russia will still be able to carry out attacks the next day, the following night, and maybe all week. They will be bombing Ukraine's strategic targets inside Ukraine. That's right, because between Russia and NATO, there's a huge difference, but above all, that's the most important thing. Ukraine. Attacking the Russian Federation, General Alexeyev in particular, who is one of the most emblematic figures in the country's military intelligence. It has attacked itself, yes, for the reasons we just mentioned, but it has also attacked the heart of the North Atlantic Alliance. Furthermore, in a double sense, it has attacked the United States, which is, without a doubt, the most fundamental pillar. The most important pillar is the key to the North Atlantic Alliance in absolutely every sense. But in addition to that, we are talking about the unity of the different countries that make up the alliance, which is definitely its heart, which in itself was already deeply affected after the excesses of Donald Trump. With Greenland, with this, with that, yes, trying to put pressure on the European Union. The truth is that NATO is probably going through its worst moments. And now, once again, it has become clear that what benefits some members of that alliance can be worse, impossibly worse for others. And in this case, the conflict of interest is between the most important members. Because the United States comes first, then most likely Great Britain, which indeed also has some influence. And it could be that they are also supported by France and Germany. Therefore, the confrontation is set, and the confrontation is set thanks to Volodymyr Zelensky. He will still have to explain to his own people what on earth they have been doing, attacking supposedly a strategic target within the Russian Federation. But basically, it has been an attempt to take the life of a general, a terrorist attack in an absolutely plain, crystal clear way. We have to call things by their name here, but for now, it has amounted to nothing because the lieutenant general is still alive right now and he might manage to get through this. Alexeyev is really something else. Those of us who know the special military operation, who know it from the inside, also know Alexeyev very well. What it represents, indeed, is a very hard blow for the Russian Federation. Also, in case some of you are wondering about the details, we will now go over them. Why, how it could have happened, why there was no defense, maybe no private security. I'll explain it to you right away, but above all, for Alexeyev, yes, indeed, it hurts the Russian Federation deeply. But for now, he is not lost to the country. But who else is it going to end up hurting? Surprisingly, it's Ukraine itself, and even more surprisingly, the North Atlantic Alliance. Supposedly, it's an allied organization for Ukraine. And supposedly, Ukraine wants to help it with this kind of actions? Or is it that NATO wants to help Ukraine by organizing this kind of actions through Ukraine's hands? The open question